Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me properly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, Shamin is waiting to join.
काय रे ऐकू नाही येते. Who is that? धीरज?
सर शमीम वेट करतोय, जॉईन होत नाही त्याचं.
Shamim. Okay, I can't see him here. I'm unable to see him actually.
Wait, sir, I asked him to rejoin the meeting.
Okay, okay. Yeah, he's coming. Okay, so let us begin again. In the last lecture, we have seen about the Z scheme of photosynthesis that operates in the plants. And we have also seen that the chlorophyll molecules are tightly integrated. The antenna molecules, in fact, are integrated to the electron carriers. And therefore, it is not just a molecular complex, but it is a supramolecular and ordered complex. Okay, and then we have also seen the important concept of exciton larceny. Okay, I hope you have all understood this part. In the case of dim sunlight, okay, if the sunlight is not enough, then how does photosystem 2 gets the enough of light? Because this particular photosystem requires more light compared to photosystem 1. We have seen how cytochrome B6F plays a central role in both photophosphorylation as well as oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, that is photosynthesis as well as aerobic respiration. And today we are going to see how the splitting of water takes place. It is a very interesting phenomenon. The reason I'm saying this is that the situation is like this, that the electrons which go to the reaction center, okay, reaction center molecule, these from the water, of course. So the reaction center actually takes up one electron at a time, okay, one by one. Whereas when a water molecule splits, actually when two water molecules split, then all the electrons, 4 electrons, are immediately released. Okay, the question is how are all the 4 electrons properly taken care of? Because the reaction center would want one electron at a time. Okay, there are two reaction centers, of course we have seen that, and both of them need 2 electrons each. Okay, and the electrons which are released from water, that happens all of a sudden, isn't it? So it shouldn't happen that the electrons are getting wasted away somewhere, or they get leaked away. Okay. Uh, of course, we have seen that for the plants, water is the source of electrons. But in the case of bacteria, there are different kinds of electron donors. For example, we have acetate, succinate, malate. So these are all organic compounds. And inorganic compounds are, for example, hydrogen sulfide, H2S. This we have seen in the case of the sulfur bacteria. Okay, sulfur bacteria require H2S as the electron donor. Okay, so now we are talking about water as the electron donor in the case of algae, blue-green algae, and the plants. Okay, or cyanobacteria, blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. Okay, So here, what is there is a specialized complex, okay, which is called as a water splitting complex. Okay, this is also sometimes called as the oxygen evolving complex. Okay, and this particular complex contains 4 manganese ions, which are very, very important for functioning of the water splitting complex. Okay, the reaction is like this: twice H2O will yield 4 protons and 4 electrons with the release of oxygen. Okay, then one more thing is that one photon cannot break water molecule because it doesn't have the enough energy, and therefore actually 4 photons are required to break the water molecule. Okay, and since there are 2 water molecules involved in order to release 1 oxygen molecule, okay, therefore 8 photons are actually required for the splitting of water. Okay, 8 photons required for splitting of water. Yes, then again, as I told you, that these electrons which come from water, they cannot directly go all of them together to P680 reaction center of photosystem 2. Okay, photosystem 2 reaction center cannot take all the electrons together or 4 electrons together. Okay, because it can accept only 1 electron at a time, right? And therefore that is especially particularly the important role of water splitting complex. It will split the water molecule, no doubt. It will release the 4 electrons, but then the 4 electrons will be given one by one to the reaction center. Okay, so how exactly it happens, let us see that. Okay, now what happens is there is an electron donor. Okay, electron donor, which is a tyrosine residue, that is called as Z tyrosine. Okay, or tyrosine Z. Okay, now this particular tyrosine residue is present in D1 protein of the photosystem 2 reaction center. Okay, so we have already seen this D1 protein that was involved in photosystem 2. Okay, and this particular D1 protein, okay, this one has tyrosine residue, and that tyrosine residue carries that electron, 1 electron, which is the immediate, which can be immediately given to the reaction center. Okay, now this tyrosine can lose 2 electrons, that is 1 proton, 1 electron and 1 proton. Okay, so it is not just 1 electron, but it is also releasing 1 proton, right? So when that happens, this tyrosine becomes a neutral radical, that is a free radical. Okay, tyrosine radical. Now this tyrosine radical, once it loses the electron, it can get that electron and the proton, both of them together, by oxidizing what is called as the cluster of manganese ion. 4 manganese ions are there in the water splitting complex. Okay, so these 4 manganese ions get oxidized. That is to say, the electrons from these manganese ions will come out, and that will be taken up by the tyrosine residue. Okay, so there are sequentially 4 electron transfers, single electrons getting transferred one by one. Okay, so that is called as 4 single electron transfers. Okay, and these 4 single electron transfers will happen because of 2 photons which are absorbed. Okay, so totally there are 8 photons. We have already seen that 8 photons are totally required for the electron transfer. Okay, and therefore the manganese cluster becomes more oxidized step by step. Okay, so when there is 1 electron transfer, it gets oxidized. When there is another electron transfer, it gets more oxidized. When there is a third electron transfer, it still gets more oxidized, and then ultimately the 4th electron also will be lost, and therefore manganese cluster with the valency 0 will now actually become manganese cluster plus 4. Okay, plus 4, that is 4 electrons are lost one by one. Okay, and then now this particular manganese complex, which has lost all the 4 electrons one by one, that complex can take up the electrons from water molecules immediately. Okay, so water will get split up, and whatever 4 electrons are released, those electrons can then be immediately taken up by the manganese complex. Is it okay? So this is an example of how very beautiful, you can say, orchestration is there in a biological process. Okay, a process which cannot take up all the 4 electrons together, okay, the electrons are taken up in a step-by-step manner by utilizing a very, you can say, a very wonderful machine, you can say. Okay, so water splitting complex is like a small machine which can evolve the electrons suddenly, okay, but the electrons are given away one by one to the reaction center. Okay, now because the protons are also involved in the process, okay, protons are also transferred along with the electrons. And therefore, these protons are released into the thylakoid lumen, that is inside the thylakoid. Okay, and therefore this water splitting complex is also acting as the proton pump. So it is not only acting, it is not only giving away the electrons from the water one by one to the reaction center, but at the same time, it is also working as a proton pump. So ultimately what will happen, the protons will go to the lumen, thylakoid lumen, and from the lumen of the thylakoid, these protons are going to come out of the thylakoid through the ATP synthase complex, and that will also result in the production of ATP. Okay. So proton motive force, which is required for generation of ATP, is also produced by the action of the water splitting complex. Is it okay? Everybody can understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Then comes the question of whether ATP synthesis and photophosphorylation or photosynthesis, are they related to each other? Okay, I have been telling you that they are related. Okay, but this particular information came from the work of many scientists who tried to discover, who tried to identify whether ATP synthesis and photosynthesis are related to each other. Okay, in 1954, a scientist by the name Daniel Arnon, he first found out that ATP is generated from ADP and inorganic phosphate during photosynthetic electron transfer. Okay, so when electrons get transferred in the electron transport chain during the photosynthesis, okay, at that time ATP is synthesized. So this was first discovered by Daniel Arnon. Okay, and then Albert Frenkel, he showed that light dependent ATP production in the pigment containing chromatophores of photosynthetic bacteria. Okay, so photosynthetic bacteria are there, they contain certain membranous structures which are called chromatophores, and in this chromatophores ATP synthesis is taking place, and that is dependent upon the light, okay, or that is related to the photosynthesis. Then Andre Jagendorf in 1966 showed that pH gradient is very much essential. Okay, the pH gradient is required, and this pH gradient actually happens across the thylakoid membrane. Okay, so within the thylakoid membrane there is lot of proton concentration, and then this particular increase in the proton concentration is what is responsible for the generation of ATP. Okay, so with that we move to the next one, and then here it is written that photophosphorylation is similar to oxidative phosphorylation. Both the processes are almost similar. Okay, and there are certain similarities which are shown here. For example, intact membranes are essential both for photosynthesis as well as respiration. Okay, intact membranes, for example, if it is mitochondrion which is producing ATP, okay, that is by oxidative phosphorylation, in that case also the mitochondrial membrane must be intact. And in photosynthesis in the plants also, the thylakoid membranes must be intact. Okay, so if the membranes are damaged, okay, then although photosynthesis may take place, that is electron transport may take place, okay, but ATP production will not happen, right? So these are similarities between in the mitochondria and the chloroplasts, that is photosynthesis and respiration. Then there are reaction centers, there are electron carriers, there are ATP forming enzymes like ATP synthase. Okay, and all these components are located in the membrane. Okay, so all the both respiration as well as photosynthesis, whatever components are involved, all these components are present in the membrane itself. Okay, it may be the mitochondrial membrane or it may be the thylakoid membrane. Then if you use certain reagents which make the membrane permeable, okay, any reagent, any chemical which will make the membrane more porous or more permeable, then that will cause reduction in or it may totally abolish the capacity of the membrane to produce ATP. Okay, and that is to say, the photosynthetic electron transport and ATP synthesis, these two processes can be uncoupled. Okay, uncoupled means what? Normally these two processes are associated with each other, they are linked to each other. Okay, that is to say, at on the one hand, electron transport is happening, NADH or NADPH is getting generated. Okay, and at the same time, because the protons are pumped across the membrane, ATP synthesis is also taking place. Okay, but if the membrane is damaged by some reagents, if the membrane is made more porous or it becomes a leaky membrane, then what happens is the ATP generation will not take place, although the electron transport will continue to happen, and probably NADH and NADPH will still be made. Okay, but ATP synthesis will not take place, and therefore this is called as uncoupling reaction. Okay, or uncoupling of the two reactions. Just a minute, I have some advertisements popping here. Okay. Then there is one chemical which is called venturicidin. Now this venturicidin inhibits the ATP synthase enzyme. Okay, and therefore it inhibits the formation of ATP. Okay, now this same chemical can block ATP synthesis in both photosynthesis, also photosynthetic organisms, and it can also block the ATP synthesis in the aerobically respiring organisms also. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then there is another important piece of similarity, that is the ATP synthase enzyme, which is present in the thylakoid membrane, okay, in the chloroplast. That ATP synthase enzyme is similar to the ATP synthase enzyme which is found in the mitochondria. So again, there is a similarity. Okay, although there may be slight variations, I would say very slight variation, but the overall structure, assembly, and the function of both the ATP synthesis, okay, in photosynthetic organisms as well as in the aerobically respiring organisms, those enzymes are the same, right? And they are called as FOF1 ATP synthase enzymes. I have written it here on the slide. Can you see that? FOF1 complex. Okay, so there are two subunits. One is called as the FO subunit and the other is called as the F1 subunit. Okay, then I go to the next slide. And here, okay, I have given here the proton and electron circuit in the thylakoid. I think I should magnify this slide so that you can read what's there. Can you read it? Okay,
Yes.
this is actually the structure of a thylakoid, okay, membranous sac. And then you will see again what I have already told you, that in the membrane, all these components are there. Okay, photosynthetic machinery is in the membrane of the thylakoid. And then you will see here the water molecule is getting split twice H2O. Okay, so this water comes from the lumen of the thylakoid, that is the inner space of the thylakoid. Okay, and then the electrons through the Mn, can you see that Mn here? That is the water splitting complex, part of the water splitting complex. So through this Mn, one by one, the electrons are going to the photosystem 2. Of course, light is falling on photosystem 2 so that the electrons are excited. And then the reduction potential will become so less that photosystem 2 reaction center becomes an electron donor. Okay, and then the electrons go to plastoquinone. Plastoquinone gets reduced, PQH2. Okay, now this H2, that is the proton, is coming from the stroma. Can you see that? Stroma of the chloroplast, the outside space. Okay, all the space outside the sac, is the chloroplast lumen, that is the stroma. Okay, so protons are coming from the stroma, electrons are coming from the photosystem 2 to the electron transport chain. This plastoquinone is getting reduced. Okay, and then the electrons go to cytochrome B6F complex here. This complex is again forcing the protons to come inside. So this is a proton pump here, right? The water splitting complex itself was a proton pump because you can see the protons are there inside the lumen of the thylakoid. Okay, now all these protons which are generated here, they are coming out, okay, into the stroma of the chloroplast, and they are coming out only through a specific point, and that specific point is the ATP synthase enzyme. Okay, so you have the FO component here. CFO is written. C stands for chloroplast. Okay, so FO component and F1 component. This F1 component of the ATP synthase is responsible for ATP synthesis from ADP and inorganic phosphate. Okay, I hope you can see that. Now the electron which was here in the cytochrome B6F complex, that is taken up by plastocyanin. Plastocyanin, I have told you, is a diffusible membrane carrier. So it goes physically to the cytochrome B6F complex, takes the electron, and then it physically goes to photosystem 1. Okay, and then it delivers the electron to photosystem 1. In the meanwhile, light is falling on photosystem 1. So photosystem 1 gets excited. The electron which it has already, that electron goes to the higher energy level. Standard reduction potential goes down, and therefore this photosystem reaction center can now donate the electron to ferredoxin, and from ferredoxin the electron is going to NADP plus H plus. Okay, and therefore we have the formation of NADPH, that is the reduced coenzyme. Okay, and this will be subsequently used in the dark reaction. Is it clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
So from
Yes.
the exam point of view, I think this diagram is very important. And based upon whatever things you are reading, okay, you can refer to different books also. And then you can make your notes also. You can write down the notes on this diagram itself. Okay, so you can just take out a printout of this, and on the printout, whatever description you want to write in detail, that you can write down on this paper. Okay, so this becomes a good reference material for your examination.
Sir,
Yes,
can I ask something?
yes, yes.
Can you explain the cyclic and non-cyclic reaction from these diagrams?
From this diagram.
Yeah, this diagram, sir.
Okay, we have already seen that if NADPH is there already, okay, there is enough supply of NADPH, okay, and there is lesser supply of ATP, okay, then what will happen is the electron which is actually taken from the cytochrome B6F complex to the photosystem 1, okay, that electron will not be given to photosystem 1, but it will come back to photosystem 2. Okay, is it clear to you? The electron will not
Yes, sir.
go, the electron will not go to the iron sulfur protein and further to ferredoxin, okay, in order to generate NADPH, because NADPH is already there in a large supply. Okay, but ATP is limiting, and therefore the electron goes back to photosystem 2. Okay, and that is called as cyclic phosphorylation, because electron coming from photosystem 2 is going back to photosystem 2. Okay, okay, then this stoichiometry, I think we have already studied, so I won't waste any time in just reading this. We have already also seen that 1 mole ATP requires about, say, 30 to 50 kilojoules of energy. But in this particular photosynthetic pathway, we are getting about 200 kilojoules of energy, which is much, much sufficient. And experimentally, we can produce at least 3 ATPs actually from that. Okay, from 200 kilojoules, at least 3 to 5 ATPs can be produced. Okay. But here we are saying, we are happy to just say that at least 1 mole of ATP can be produced. Okay. And therefore that reaction becomes favorable. Photosynthesis is thermodynamically, you can say it is favorable for these photosynthetic organisms. Then one more thing is here I have written that NADPH, which is formed in the final stage of electron transfer, this molecule itself is an energy rich molecule. Okay. And that leads us to say that enough amount of energy can be produced in photosynthesis. Then I have already been talking about this part, that NADPH and ATP. Okay, these two components are balanced. If there is a large supply of NADPH, then that particular process will be stopped. We have seen in cyclic phosphorylation that NADPH is not required. Okay, and then ATP synthesis will continue to happen. So there is a balance of both these molecules, NADPH and ATP. Then coming to ATP synthase enzyme of the chloroplast. Can you see this title clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because in my presentation, what is happening is this particular Zoom command line is actually blocking my title. Okay, so I cannot see it very clearly. Doesn't matter. Okay, so this ATP synthase enzyme is a large complex. It has 2 functional units, that is CFO and CF1. Okay, C stands for chloroplast, right? And this actually F stands for a kind of ATPase which is called as F-type ATPase. Okay, so we are going to study more details about these ATPases later when we study aerobic respiration. Okay, now this particular complex appears like knob-like projections on the outside surface of the thylakoid membrane. Okay, let me just show you with the help of a diagram. You will see it here. This is the thylakoid. Okay, thylakoid sac is here. This is the thylakoid membrane. Okay, can you see my cursor moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
this is the thylakoid membrane, and in this thylakoid membrane, this FO F1 ATPase, okay, this is present. This appears like a knob-like projection, okay, and it is projecting into the stroma. That is, it is outside the thylakoid. Can you understand what I'm saying? It is projected outside the thylakoid in the stroma of the chloroplast. Okay, but if you compare this with the structure of the mitochondrial ATP synthase, just look at this first image here. Okay, in the case of mitochondrial ATP synthase, this enzyme is present in a reverse orientation. That is to say, the knob-like projection is projecting inside the mitochondrion.